COVID-19 pandemic began for Jamaica somewhere around March, February 2020. Prior to that, what was happening is that we've been moving on a positive trajectory coming out of the great debt crisis that we were in. So around about 2012, 2013, Jamaica's debt was about, call it 144–45% of GDP. And through prudent fiscal management of government spending, and also the implementation of fiscal reforms governed by a fiscal rule that was stipulated by the IMF, we have been able to move that debt from 145% of GDP to over just 96% of GDP. So that's one economic measure. We saw where inflation was gradually coming down as well. Inflation, which is prices, average prices that we spend from day to day, which is the average cost of living for the average Jamaican, was also trending downwards. So overall, prior to the COVID-19 crisis, Jamaica was not perfect because GDP growth was still a problem, because we hypothesized that we wanted to achieve by 2025% growth, but we were only stuck at the regular 1% that we have been at over the last 50 years. And that's because of innate handicaps of the Jamaican economy. But overall, when you look at where we were before the COVID crisis, we were trying to get ourselves on that positive path.
The country's finance minister, Dr. Nigel Clark, was in hot demand by the international media to reveal the secrets for success of the Jamaican economy.
From a service point of view, you're talking about financial services, and insurance was really booming. Wholesale and retail was also improving to some extent. So we see where prior to the COVID-19 crisis, the economy was gradually exfoliating itself to fill some of the handicaps that we've had.
But then, in March of 2020, the country confirmed its first case of the coronavirus, a female patient who had arrived from the United Kingdom. More cases were then identified in quick succession, and in response to this, following on the examples of China, where it is claimed the virus originated, the government of Jamaica ordered a lockdown. All schools were to be closed, a work-from-home directive for non-essential workers in place, the closure of all ports of entry, and the invocation of special powers under the Disaster Risk Management Act, the Emergency Powers Act, and the Public Health Act. These measures were meant to contain the spread of the virus, which by now had gripped people with fear. But what it also did was grind the economy to a halt.
And bam, the pandemic came, and it impacted the world in a negative way and plunged global GDP all the way to rock bottom. Now, from where Jamaica is, remember, what the first response for many countries to the pandemic has been a global lockdown, which means that you're restricting movement, you're restricting travel. When movement and travel is restricted, because the tourism industry, hotels and restaurants, was our biggest industry, and prior to the pandemic, it was growing by 5%. It was improving back in 2019. It was growing. And now that the pandemic has hit us, it is now dwindled by a whopping 87%. So we're seeing that only 13% of the hotel and tourism activity that was taking place prior to the pandemic is now taking place in Jamaica. So that is one thing. When you're looking at the economy now, remember, I'm from Montego Bay. So most of my relatives work in the hotel industry. They haven't been working since last year, March. Now, many of them, they still have kids going to school. They still have rent to pay. They still have hardware to buy for their children, for example, laptops and tablets, because of the transition of the economy moving from face-to-face learning to online. So the idea here is, how do we satisfy the demands of these people? And it's not just those who work in the hotel and tourism industry. It's pervasive straight across the board, because the Jamaican economy the tourism industry has backward and forward linkages. So backward linkages would be, for example, the agricultural sector, that it is connected to, that feeds agricultural produce to these hotels. And the forward linkages would be, for example, when a hotel worker earns their money, where do they spend it? They spend it at the supermarket, they spend it at the dressmaker, they spend it at but the idea here is that because the outdoors now has been crunched, it's having a severe impact.
Because a large section of the population operates in an informal economy where movement and gathering are essential, with these off-limits, the average Jamaican began to buckle under the weight of a country under lockdown.
The entertainment industry is one of the most expansive industries across Jamaica. A lot of people, the dancers, the people who vend, the promoters, the selectors, the dancers, most of these people earn a living from Jamaica's nightlife and Jamaica's entertainment industry. And since last year, March, our entertainment industry has been on a pause. What does this mean? Many of these people have had to be finding clever ways to earn an income. A lot of the people are complaining because what they have had to be doing is keeping day round robins. So round robin is like a partner, it's not a regular party. It's like you are looking to this event to make a substantial amount of money to contribute to a substantial expense that you would have accumulated over a particular period of time. So imagine you can't pay your partner or pay your contribution to a round robin that was already in full swing before the COVID-19 pandemic hit. So a lot of people have been negatively affected and set back to their last. Most of the savings that many people had for a rainy day have now disappeared because they are leaning back on those savings to